Alright, time to revive this dying channel once again with regurgitated Naruto content, but this one's a cool video, so consider liking and subscribing. Okay, remember when you were a kid watching Cartoon Network? There was a show called Samurai Jack whose opening sequence gripped just harder than the pains of living in the daily jive of a 9-to-5 job. Okay, yeah you do. So what's my point then? Nostalgia, my friends. That opening sequence, the following song, and the story that followed is etched in our memories. In a similar manner, the opening sequence of Naruto, where the story of a 9-tailed beast attacking a village and being sealed off by a man named the Fourth Hokage, is the beginnings of a nostalgia trip that holds on to us to this very day. But here's the thing, I personally feel that Naruto Part 1 was more of a hype ride than Naruto Part 2, which was, in retrospect, not as gripping as its predecessor. It was one of the best introduction to shonen anime that I've seen to date. Of course, you might think that I feel this hype due to the childhood nostalgia associated with it, but I rechecked the major moments in both the parts, and honestly the first one hits it better than the second. So allow me to indulge you in Naruto Part 1 propaganda. The best part about Naruto Part 1 is that it gets down to brass tacks really quickly. You have the major backdrop of the Nine-Tails being sealed off in Naruto by the Fourth Hokage. You then see a talentless little kid by the name of Naruto Uzumaki. He doesn't have any friends and people close to him, mainly because he's an orphan and the Jinchuriki of the Nine-Tails. The only people close to him is a Ninja Academy instructor, Iruka Umino, and the third Hokage. Iruka Umino is very important in this regard. Iruka's sacrifice for a boy like Naruto makes things interesting in the first few episodes. Owing to his own experiences as an orphan, Iruka related to Naruto on a personal level. Afterwards, we saw Naruto save Iruka by fighting against the enemy Shinobi using his newly learned Shadow Clone Jutsu. The link of that scene is down below for anyone who's interested to rewatch that gem of a moment. So yes, it was a humble yet exciting beginning. Naruto coming out of his shell, taking his first step into the world of shinobis, coupled with the emotions of that scene, indeed set the stage for Naruto as a series. This scene was followed by the formation of Team 7. The formation of Team 7 isn't necessarily hype, but a good show of how characters are introduced. We meet Naruto's new teammates, Sasuke and Sakura. We also meet the sensei of the trio, Kakashi Hatake. Let's discuss Sasuke first off. A cool, calm, and mysterious kid looking to kill that special someone. His character is literally the entire subreddit of I'm 14 and that's deep. Seriously though, his aura was very cool, and I'll be honest, as a kid I wanted to adopt his persona. Of course, I failed miserably at that because I was still learning about myself. As far as Kakashi is concerned, don't get me started. The character design is just to die for. The mask not very popular during that era, and his demeanor just make for a character that's literally deep and exceedingly strong. We later find out that he checks the list on both metrics. Now I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the elephant in the room, Sakura. The weakest link in the whole team, her introduction and her eventual role in the series wasn't expanded at length beyond her obsession with Sasuke, but this formation was all fun and games compared to what was to follow later on. I'll be honest, I love the 7 swordsmen of the mist. One part because they're so damn cool, and the second because analyzing one of them gave my channel the big boost it very much needed. Zabuza Momochi and his early introduction into the Narutoverse really took part 1 to an insanely next level. His character design, backstory, and his and Haku's fight with both Kakashi and the trio of sensei and students made the whole Land of Waves arc an interesting watch without a doubt. And while his fighting prowess might be good, it isn't the reason why Zabuza became an instant fan favorite and gave Naruto Part 1 its vibe. Surrounded by a group of gangsters, Zabuza died fighting the Horde like a true shinobi. In my video on Kisame Hoshigaki, I discussed how valiantly Kisame died even though he was an antagonist. Zabuza died in a similar manner, showcasing the concept of death in the Naruto world in its fullest form. It was something that Naruto Shippuden could not carry out in such graphic detail. Speaking of which, if Zabuza and the Land of Waves arc were graphic, the Chunin exams doubled down on it. The written test during the first half showed the aspect of a ninja that's often overlooked, espionage. Held by the ever-menacing Ibiki Morino, it showed in a comical way that cheating is fair game. While Naruto's response to that isn't necessarily following the rules, he managed to pass. What else can you expect except a little bit of plot armor, at least at that time. The second phase of the Chunin exam is dark as hell. The Forest of Death with its overall vibe of darkness is already unsettling. On top of that, you have guys like Orochimaru, the sound ninja who are ever so menacing, and the antagonist turned protagonist, Gaara of the Sand. With everything going around, the Forest of Death also showcased the first major plot twist of the series, Sasuke succumbing to Orochimaru. This would later set the stage for an elongated character arc for Sasuke, part of which will be discussed in the later sections of this video. After the Forest of Death, you have the one-on-one matchups. This is the point where Kishimoto missed out on so much that could be used as a catalyst to make part 2 even more interesting. Think about it, it was plot twist after plot twist. Would you have expected Shino Aburame to get the upper hand on Zaku with his insect manipulation technique? It was a sight to see and made me think of Shino in such a respectful light. Before that, it was just jokes and banter enforced by Kiba Inuzuka's constant wisecracks against Shino. Okay, don't go too far yet. Think about Kankuro's puppet technique and how he managed to get the upper hand against the Konoha shinobi with such ease and simplicity. We didn't hear much from Kankuro afterwards, did we? He became rather mellow. Besides that, you had Temari taking down Tenten in such a brutal manner, the start of Shikamaru's strategic prowess, Naruto's epic fart win against Kiba, Hinata's resolve against Neji, Choji being one-shotted by Dozu, and honorable mention to the greatest fight in anime history, Gaara vs Rock Lee. So many characters with such great potential were introduced, and hardly 1% of them ever got the chance to shine in part 2. I guess this is the crux of this whole essay, that Kishimoto didn't take the Ichiro Oda route. In making the series short, he decided not to beef up the character arcs of the various members of Konoha 11 and other major protagonists. Okay, moving on. In the background of that part of the Chunin exams, you see the boiling pot brewing that would eventually culminate with the attack on Konoha, which I'll discuss in the next section. During the attack on Konoha arc, there was so much drama. I mean, yeah, you could consider Naruto and Sasuke's fight good, but overall there wasn't much matter to them except one fight. Shikamaru versus Temari. That match is peak Naruto, honestly, and I get goosebumps thinking about it every time. It's built up on the hype created in the previous matchups. Think about it, you had a guy who knew his fight wasn't being watched and didn't even want to participate in the fight because it was such a drag. On the other hand, you had the Sand Shinobi who was too full of herself and her potential. In the beginning, it was classic Shikamaru from all we knew of him. When he finally turned the tide on the fight and got the upper hand, Shinobi in the stand stated, "Everyone is being drawn in by the fight," when they were previously not even bothering about it. There's a YouTube video on the final scene of the fight, link down below. In it, we see the shamisen instrument being played in the background and Shikamaru and Temari both have their hands up. He's about to forfeit and Choji is just munching on chips due to the events that are about to unfold. Shikamaru forfeits the fight and Choji stops eating, knowing that this was what Shikamaru would have done. Seriously, Shikamaru Nara is a gangster level shinobi because of his strategic wit. He's the one member in the Konoha 11 who got the most limelight in part 2. It was well deserved too, because we at least got to see him take revenge for Asuma's death against Hidan. Okay, so besides Shikamaru, you had the attack on Konoha, the third Hokage's valiant stand against Orochimaru and the revived Hokages, and the fights of Orochimaru's henchmen against the Konoha 11. But there is another moment that's very pivotal. Naruto's summoning of Gamabunta and him fighting alongside him against Shukaku and Gaara is a fight that in my opinion matches the vibe of the Tailed Beast fights during the Shinobi World War arc. It reached that much of a gargantuan scale, which brings me to the Sasuke Retrieval Arc and the final arc of part 1. Okay, I'm not going to say anything about this arc. I personally feel that while it was the impetus for the future of the series, it wasn't that exciting to watch. Yes, the fight itself was animated well, but it siloed Naruto and Sasuke as the only two characters in the series. Make of that what you wish, since my conclusion is that that's the place where trouble began for the series as a whole. Again, the Konoha 11's abilities shine more than the actual confrontation between Sasuke and Naruto in my opinion. I personally liked how much Gaara changed after the Konoha crush and saved Rock Lee, his former adversary, from Kimimaro. Speaking of which, the Rock Lee drunken fist fight is as exhilarating as it is comical. So yeah, while it wasn't the best arc, it definitely had its moments. From all of what I've discussed with you in this video, I think I hit my point home on why part 1 outshined part 2. Even though part 1 eventually did lead to Shippuden, I feel that Kishimoto wrote the first part with a lot more heart and pacing than the second. But one thing that we can all agree on in this debate is that even if he didn't make the latter parts as interesting, Kishimoto certainly gave the series an intense start. Hope you liked this video and thank you for watching.